Well, thank you for being here with us.
It's great to see so many friends and some new faces, some new names, as it were.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, let us welcome you today. Welcome and thank you for being with us. We will go ahead and get started. So let us begin with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Praise to you, God, for all your work among us. Yours is the vigor in creation. Yours is the impulse in our new discoveries. Make us adventurous, yet reverent and hopeful in all we do. Amen.
Amen.
We are so glad you are here with us. Thank you for the time that you have given to us today. This is a great way to kick off our June Fall Giving webinars and all of those things. I am Stephanie Gurnsey Higgins. I am the Minister for Diocesan Development and Giving in the Diocese of Virginia, coming to you from my home office here. I need to get my screen set a little bit better. Thank you. I live in the Richmond area, just north of the city, actually. And it is still sunny out, although I think that is bound to change at some point. Julie?
Hi, my name is Julie Simonton. I am the Minister for Congregational Development and Stewardship in the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia, and I too am broadcasting from my home. We are in our second to last day of school, so you might see a little school time activity running around behind me. And I also live in the Richmond area, but I live on the other side of the James, which for folks around the Diocese of Virginia will know that means I am actually living in the Diocese of Southern Virginia, because the two dioceses boundary is on the James, so if you live on the other side of the river in Richmond, you're in a different diocese. So hello from the south side. We are so glad that so many of you are here, and names we know and recognize and new names that we're excited to get to know. Thank you for taking time to be with us. Stephanie and I have wanted to launch something like these webinars for a while, and we're so glad that they have been so well received and that you are here with us. We look forward to the conversation we're going to have today and to hearing from you what would be the most helpful for your ministry and your church and your context. As we move into what we have planned to share today, we'd like to offer just a few notes on how our time together will work before we get started. Our conversations are always richer because you are here, and our conversations are always richer when they are in community. We are grateful for those of you who have let us know who you are, which churches, which dioceses, where you worship. If you have not already, please do include your first and last name with your Zoom identification with your digital name tag. Throughout the webinar, your questions are very welcome, and the ministry work you are offering at your church is also important for us to hear. As we go through the webinar today, please use either the chat function, which some of you have already used, or the Q&A format to send us your questions or to describe what's working at your church. If Stephanie or I is talking, the other is watching the chat and the Q&A. So don't worry about interrupting the flow or what we're saying. Just go right ahead and write what your questions are or what your thoughts are, and we'll pick them up. Many of the questions we will be able to address during the webinar today. If the question is really church specific, we will get your information and we'll enjoy talking with you later and separately so that we can really go deeply into the story. If the question is too large for today to answer completely, we'll do the best we can with the time that we have, and then perhaps include your question in a future webinar. We do have this series going on through the rest of June. You can also bring your questions or comments to our Facebook page, or bring them to our virtual office hours. We've had a great time this week chatting with some of you through our virtual office. We have these office hours on Zoom on Mondays from 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning Eastern Time, and on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 7:30 Eastern Time during the month of June. And then what comes in June and July, we will decide after we have a chance to get to know everybody and see what kind of questions we're going. So this is not only happening for June, but that's what we have the schedule going through. And finally, we will be grateful for your experience and ideas about what you would like for us to discuss during future webinars and how we might structure our time together in a different way that will best address your ideas and questions and where you're finding Jesus in your church and community. Please don't hesitate to be in touch with us during or after the webinar with your thoughts. Our emails are here in the chat along with some of our other links, and we are so glad for you to use them and to be in touch with us. All right, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. There were many concerns that we heard from clergy and stewardship lay leaders at the beginning of this crisis, and one of them was about the potential decrease in giving and how their congregation would continue to pay for the critical ministries. That's why we quickly established a plan for parishioners to give to their congregation through the Diocesan online giving portal. By using a process that we already had in place, churches could continue to receive financial gifts without interruption. And this gave the churches chances to do the work to put more permanent solution into place. Today, we're here to help you develop a plan to establish digital giving for your church, if you haven't already done so, to help encourage recurring giving among your parishioners, and enhance the messaging you use to optimize digital giving. We're going to see some information from the past couple of years, as well as data that's based on giving from the first 3 months of the COVID crisis. We're going to talk about why digital giving needs to be part of your present and your future. We'll look through specific offerings from some digital giving platforms and how to compare them so that you can determine which one is best for you. And once you have the digital giving platform in place, how you can best ensure success for your congregation. We'll also have some resources for you once we get everything put to the website. Along with these slides, we'll post a list of the digital platforms that we'll be looking at today, along with the links to their websites, a comparison chart for your team to use as you collect information during your research and the demos, a list of thank you opportunities you have and ways to create things that you'll need to create as part of your gratitude plan, and then also a digital and recurring giving plan. So the studies from online giving providers and other groups suggest that donors who give electronically, especially when they make recurring gifts, give more than those who give checks and cash. Research from PushPay tells us that those who give electronically gave 33% more than traditional church givers. And a study from Network for Good said across all nonprofit givers, recurring donors give up to 42% more. Of course, we know it's not just about money. As folks who are involved in stewardship, we know that people who are engaged in the life of our congregations are often those who are working to engage more deeply in their own faith journey. The Venko Churchgoer Giving Study found that electronic givers contributed a larger percentage of their salary to the church compared to traditional givers, and that they're more engaged in church activities than traditional givers. This confirms that people give more and are more often engaged because they've been discipled, they've been stewarded. We know that congregations that already had high levels of electronic giving were better equipped to address the move to digital giving when it was no longer possible for us to worship together inside our church buildings. But what about the rest of us? Why is this important, especially now? If you saw any of our webinars this spring, you heard me talk about the giving curve that follows after a crisis. While there is usually a natural bump in giving at the onset of a crisis, most organizations will begin to experience a slump before too long. As churches, we've been accustomed to a slump, a naturally occurring slump in the summer, when parishioners begin to drift away on their own and their attendance shifts, and along with their attendance, their giving drifts too. And that's what this giving curve shows us will happen, but it will be much more drastic. For churches, this slump, along with the giving curve, is like the disruption that churches are accustomed to in the summer, when parishioners can't give financially during the offertory when they attend worship in person. This week, new information was provided from the Global Trends in Giving survey. And while the full data won't be released until September, the key findings provide some idea of who donated in the immediate response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it's worth noting that 68% of the respondents to the survey were female, 31% were male. And along with that, 41% were baby boomers, 24% were millennials, 22% were Gen Xers, and 11% were matures, and 2% were Gen Zs. And overall, this actually very well does mirror the nonprofit donor pool. The top 3 preferred methods of giving in this survey were online giving, bank and wire transfers, and direct mail post. I know that these screenshots are somewhat difficult for you, but I will tell you the colors they use are pretty good, and that's mostly what you'll need to see. Here, I think these methods not only show us what was available at the beginning of the crisis, online, bank transfer, and direct mail, but it's likely, these are also likely to be what is available to us throughout the crisis. .6% of donors in the survey were currently enrolled in recurring giving programs. Recurring donors are more likely to give to an organization in a crisis than an organization they have no relationship with. Also, we know the lifetime value of a recurring donor is almost always higher than that of a one-time gift. Almost 50% had donated to a crowdfunding campaign in the last 12 months, but almost as many had not. And they asked people if they had created an online peer-to-peer campaign within the last 12 months, and only a little over 12% had. 20.9% gave to a nonprofit last fall for Giving Tuesday. So I do get the impression that this survey was taken before Giving Tuesday now in May. I put this information about crowdfunding and peer-to-peer campaigns here because some of the platforms we will look at have this capability. If you think it's going to be valuable for your congregation, then you should consider this when you make your comparisons. Have you donated money to a nonprofit you volunteered for? 66.7% had volunteered for a nonprofit in the last year, and 74% had donated to that nonprofit. Remember what we said about engagement? Even in a crisis, or maybe especially in a crisis, folks are engaged with your congregation. They are with you. And which of the following are most likely to inspire you to give repeatedly to an organization? Folks were allowed to choose more than one answer here, but for folks who gave digitally, they mostly wanted to receive regular communications by email. Up to 65% say they want to hear about the impact of their donation this way. But as we talked about in our best practices conversations, you still need to engage folks on different platforms. There are folks who want to receive print communications, as you can see, and others who want to hear about you on social media, and some who want handwritten notes or a phone call. The way you communicate with your donors should be about them, not about you. Our churches have done a good job figuring out how to maintain their relationships and connections with parishioners and begin to move their worship to a different format. But many are still struggling to figure out how to provide a way for parishioners to continue their financial relationship with their congregation. Most donors are already using different forms of online transaction for everything, from bill paying to receiving direct deposits for their paychecks. Even before this crisis, an increasing number were giving online to other causes they cared about. So it's really imperative that churches engage parishioners in new ways, providing a way for them to give electronically, especially through recurring giving options. This way, your ministries have the opportunity to grow and meet the needs of your community, meeting our parishioners where they are, especially with their giving. As we've seen, this crisis has truly enhanced our use of digital giving. In April alone, e-commerce retailers had more traffic to their sites each and every day of the month than they do on the day after Thanksgiving, which is the busiest shopping day of the year. You can't tell me that people haven't figured out digital. And even though we know that this crisis is driving us to digital, we know, looking at the trends over the last couple of years, that people in our churches were already moving to online monthly giving. This is a sure and steady growth that's been happening for many years. Even if this crisis hadn't happened, our congregations would need to respond. And now that we have a critical need to be able to accept offerings and gifts while we are no longer able to worship together in person, we should take this opportunity to prepare, to use this time to help ourselves in our present, knowing that it will continue to help us into our future. Excuse me. So I started using e-checks and the web bill pay option offered by my bank almost 10 years ago. It is in fact so long ago now, I can't remember the last check I wrote, last bank church I wrote a check to, excuse me. I only had to reorder checks last year when we moved. And I have really enjoyed the fact that all of the churches that I have been to in the last 20 years are in my bank account, and I can give to them when I want to, when my heart is generous, when I have money in my bank account, and I can do it at the tap of my fingers. Julie and I have had conversations about this too. I know that she does her giving through web bill pay as well. And for me, I find this something that I enjoy. I enjoy that this is a way that I can be generous. Many of the platforms that we will talk about too have options where you can receive funds for events or specific items. If you were collecting money for youth trips, for camp, for picnics, retreats, this will give you another option that is very attractive to many people. As we have talked about in other events and other conversations, average Sunday attendance for most Episcopalians hovers somewhere around 1.2 times a month. If you are able to make it easier for folks to provide their offering and gifts to your congregation in a regular manner, you will make it easier for them to be good stewards, and you will make it easier on your church's budget. I have been part of several churches since I've started doing this kind of work, and I'm always amazed at the way we tend to exclude folks from the offering time when we pass the plate. We'll pass it while the choir is singing, and they might get to fling their offering envelope in the plate afterwards as it passes by. Our clergy aren't usually able to participate. And when I took my turn working in the nursery, no one came to gather my offering either. So you might be able to see how we could be more inclusive of the people who worship with us by offering digital giving. And all of this is before we even begin to include folks who will be watching our services through Facebook Live and YouTube into the future when we return to worshiping together in our buildings.
Thank you. And I have been so glad to read in the comments that several of you are currently looking into how to encourage folks who are attending who are not currently parishioners at your church to be able to give during your broadcast on Facebook or YouTube. And some of our information that we'll have today will help you as you consider that. So now that the barriers of entry are breaking down, and it is so much easier for our organizations to set up digital giving and for individuals to take part, this is the time to make sure that you have these giving options at your church. The Burke Donor Survey is an annual research project studying Americans' philanthropy, and specifically how fundraising practices and beliefs affect the financial well-being of not-for-profit organizations. Beginning with a 2016 survey, they noted that the percentage of donors who chose to give electronically no longer varies significantly across generations. And this is absolutely true in what we're seeing across our churches. And with this, it is important to note that as we communicate across generations, it is essential to communicate in the patois of each generation. So for instance, as Stephanie was talking about before, I do give electronically to my church, but occasionally I do pull out a check to do something. And one of my girlfriends a few years ago when I pulled out the check said, how vintage, because she Venmos. She doesn't use checks. So that's one example there. And another example is if you're writing in your newsletters, for instance, the electronic giving is, for instance, even easier than writing a check, that will resonate with those who write checks. It's not going to resonate with the 20-somethings who don't know how to write a check, who need your help. Perhaps some of you have been through this when someone younger is trying to write a check. Where do you put the date? Exactly what are you supposed to put in the pay to order? So if you're talking about, as you move into digital, this is just as easy as writing a check. Make sure you know who your audience is and be mindful of the context in which you're describing the possibilities of digital giving. I'm also going to add here to consider the gender of your generations here too. As Stephanie indicated earlier, 68% of the respondents in the survey regarding giving during the COVID pandemic were women, which is likely an indication of who is giving. The Episcopal Church, among all mainline denominations, just like other mainline denominations, trends older than other denominations. Just like other denominations, it also trends female because life expectancy for women is longer. Thus, the majority of decisions and the decision makers and the givers in the Episcopal Church are older women. So if you're interested in the majority of your givers giving electronically, be mindful of your real audience. Be mindful that most of them are older women. And I would suggest here for one of their own, an older woman, to be one of the ones enthusiastically embracing digital giving and evangelizing digital giving to your congregation. Stephanie and I are in conversations quite often with church treasurers and finance folks. these folks tend to be men. So, you know, think about how we might balance this in the future as well. But for now, if your church trends male in the treasury and finance ministries, consider how you might broaden the demographic of those who are actually talking, writing, and evangelizing about digital giving and how to do it, which Stephanie is going to talk more about in the next segment.
Thank you. We are going to talk about some technical aspects now of digital giving that will help you be successful, as well as begin to talk about process changes that will enhance your success. The technical capabilities, you don't need to worry about too much because they are usually present in the basic functionality of the third-party online providers, but we are going to go through and talk about them so that you know that they are there. So as you are looking at the platforms, mostly you want to find a platform that works for you, for your congregation. It might not be the one that works for my congregation or the one down the street from you. Your congregation has a particular context. Use your comparison chart to determine the one that works best for you. You're going to want to establish a plan to move your parishioners from traditional giving to digital giving. Don't throw them in the deep end. You're going to want to help them. You're going to want to use all of your tools here, generational tools, ways in which to talk to different people and your gender and male and female conversation tools here too, okay? Make sure you have a donate button on your website and that it is easy to find. Usually this means it's in a contrasting color or that it is red and that it is in the upper right-hand corner. It should only take me one click to get from your web page to the donation page, and your donation page should be easy to navigate. The default settings should encourage parishioners to make recurring gifts. Sometimes this can even be pre-checked. Obviously, they can uncheck it if they'd like. But sometimes you can change the order of them on the page. You can have one set above the other. And also you can have the options set that are the gift options that are the least costly for your church. You really want to make sure that the speed and ease of use are critical to the donor experience. So ask for the minimal amount of information. This isn't the time to ask me for the names of all my family members, our birthdays, and if I want to join a Bible study, right? But if the platform allows, set the default option to cover the transaction fees. Surveys tell us that this option usually results in between 30 and 50% of parishioners covering their fees. Some churches find even more. And be sure to check your donation site on different browsers and on different devices to make sure that the mobile optimization works for as many devices as possible. These processes that we're going to talk about are similar to all giving, and they will continue to enhance your digital giving methods as well. You will want to create a platform that is as specific to your context as possible. Your donation page should look as much like your website as possible. It should create a sense of comfort and trust using the similar colors and branding and a logo. You want to be responsive to people and their gifts. We've included information in the resources, like I said, but it's important to include here. Digital giving platforms have a gift confirmation email. You should customize it. Make sure it says thank you. You might even think about changing it periodically in order to keep up to date and respond to people. I would suggest creating a gratitude plan.
Can I jump in here really quickly with that?
Sure.
I recently did set up with Eventbrite, and with the Eventbrite event, we were able to set up a donation place. And I know with Eventbrite in particular, you get an auto response that it's gone through, but you also have the option to send an additional response that contains information. So be sure that the auto response that they get on the page, on the website itself, make sure you customize that, as well as set up an additional auto response email. So there's two things to set up when you're doing some of these. You've got the website. Once it clicks through and the transaction processes, the web page itself says it's done. And then you can also set up something to go into their inbox. And with the thing that goes into their inbox, make sure that you include a link that allows them to take a deeper step into your organization. If there's something special that's going on, but you think that that person might not know about it, say, and also check out this opportunity to attend the virtual concert, or something like that. So it's also a place to click through. So just remember, with the website, with the website giving, there are two thank yous to set up. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So your confirmation email should not be the last thing they hear from you. The virtual cycle in fundraising is ask, thank, report, and then you can ask again. When I went through and did the resource page for us to post, I used the gratitude plan that I have for people who give to the diocese for an unrestricted gift. And when I looked through it, there are at least 4, and sometimes, depending on the time of the year, 5 touches that somebody would get, at least 5 touches before they would receive another ask. But you also want to make sure that you tell your donors how their gifts make a difference. You want to ask them to sign up for something, maybe. You maybe want to send them something. I have that information in the resource page, because sending them something and asking them to sign up, those are 2 very important aspects, because it's about engagement. But you also want to make a plan for how to reach out to new donors, new pledgers. I've been giving to my church since I was probably 3 or 4 years old when I got my first box of envelopes. I should be acknowledged and thanked, but I don't need the same tending that someone who is a new giver or a new Christian or who is new to my church or newer in their faith journey. These are precious moments, and that needs intentional stewardship by different people throughout the congregation. I promise you, it's not going to be hard, but if you are intentional about these relationships, you will see them bloom. And as I've said, I've included this information on building a gratitude plan in the resources. And I'm also glad to speak about this in our office hours. We would love to have this conversation more deeply. And you're also going to want to continue to engage with folks where they are, to disciple them through their journey and educate them on the wonders of what a full life in stewardship and giving has given you. And now, before we look at the individual platforms, there is one more thing to consider. Your staff and your congregation are going to have a different perspective on this transition. For staff, this is going to be a little transactional. It is going to be, their questions are going to be, what is my login? How long is it going to take to set up? But once the setup is done for them, it's going to be great. It should make things easier and quicker and simpler. For parishioners in your congregation, this is going to be transformational. It's a culture shift. Some of them might take to it right away. Some of them might not, and you will need to go slowly. You need to find a platform that has the capabilities you need and the convenience it takes to get people to use it. You will need to go gently with both your staff and your parishioners, and have them be gentle with one another, because they're probably not having the same experience. So start with your needs, and then choose the tool to meet them. This is where your comparison grid will be very helpful. Get demonstrations on the platforms you're considering. Who should be involved in this team? I would be sure to include your financial administrator or treasurer and your clergy, and also include somebody who's an early adopter and maybe somebody who isn't. I think both perspectives are equally valuable. I think that, yeah?
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I'm getting things pulled up with all the different screens.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not a huge surprise here that 75% of millennials express a preference for electronic giving, but 36% also tithe. They give 10% of their income to the church. So if you're looking to make your church friendlier and more welcoming to this generation, you might want to consider including a millennial or two on your team, along with older women.
My mom would be good at this, actually.
I'm going to talk with your mom.
The end goal here really is simplicity for folks who will be using the platform. And I've said this before, but I will say it now and I will say it again. The goal is to find a platform that works best for you. And it might not be the cheapest, but it will be the one that has the features that meets your needs. You're looking to improve the giving experience for parishioners, and we want them to express their generosity and meet their need to give while creating an opportunity for your church to have clear and steady cash flow. And now we're going to begin to look at the digital giving platforms. We're going to start with PayPal because a lot of people have PayPal accounts already. It was, early on the digital scene. Some people like PayPal, some people do not. But as I've said, a lot of people have accounts, so it is a good place for some congregations to begin. They accept credit cards, debit cards, and PayPal only. You can set up specific programs for folks to give to so that you can give towards a pledge or additional funds. They do have a way to set up recurring donations, and they offer special rates for nonprofit organizations. If you already use an ACS product like ACS Database, Realm, the City, you likely already have access to a credit card processor. If you're not using them already, check your contract or contact ACS to look at whether this might meet your needs. Venco is the servicer they use, and their rates are very competitive. Easy Tithe is offering churches $0 a month and free text giving currently. They accept credit, debit, and bank payments, and your donors can choose to cover the transaction fees. There is a mobile app for Apple and Android phones. They offer recurring giving options, text to give. It integrates with many of the church databases and accounting software programs that folks are using. There is a small charge to add a kiosk, should that be of interest to you later on. There is no contract, and the transaction fees are listed here and quite reasonable. There are many options in the Tithely universe: a church management database, a dedicated church app. All of them are available individually, or you can create a bundle. You can, right now, use the digital giving platform for free, except for the transaction costs. It accepts debit, credit, and bank payments. There is a mobile giving app for Apple and Android phones, and it offers recurring giving and allows your donors to cover the transaction fees. Also, because the Diocese of Virginia is a member of TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, we receive a discount that includes a reduced transaction fee. So on the screencast, it says the transaction percentage is 2.9%. By using this link, the reduced transaction fee is 2.75%. Faith Street is a platform that is new to me, and I don't know much about it. Looking through their website, they say they, quote, understand that giving is a spiritual discipline and about breaking barriers, not traditions. I gotta say, I love that. But if you want to know more about how what their product is like, you're going to have to ask for a demo. There's just not much on their website. And I don't know anyone who's used it, but I get information from them. It's app-based only, and for Apple as well. There's no Android app. It does not integrate with other products, but they offer recurring giving, and the donor can choose to cover transaction fees. That said, as you can see, there is a sliding scale based on the size of the church, but it is definitely more expensive. PushPay will also do total engagement if you want. They have a church management database, and they can create a dedicated app for your church. But today, we're just looking at digital giving. They accept credit, debit, ACH, and bank payments. Plus, you can record your offline giving like cash, checks, stocks, and non-monetary gifts through the admin portal. PushPay does integrate with dozens of church management databases, and you can set up different funds for folks to give to. I will say there's no pricing information on the website, so you will have to contact them for that information. I know that there have been a couple of churches in the diocese who have used PushPay, so there may be some folks who you can speak to.
Yeah, they've used PushPay and have been very happy with PushPay as far as I know.
I don't know much about this platform either, but I can see where it would hold possibilities for some churches. It is app-based only, available for both Apple and Android phones. There are no sign-up or monthly fees, and they will do customized branding for you. You can set up funds and campaigns, set donation goals. You can export the data to your own database or your accounting software, and the transaction fees are competitive. SecureGive was created by a pastor who didn't have what he wanted for his church. And to be fair, it appears to be clearly for well-resourced congregations. They provide a lot of options. I think when we were looking at it, they were one of the first that provided kiosks as well. And they do some webinars and trainings that we've seen. They also now provide on the platform the ability to toggle from English to Spanish within the platform. And they do have the most competitive pricing for transaction fees that I've seen. However, the monthly costs are really beyond what I have seen for most of these, and so may well be beyond the prices that most congregations can find reasonable.
And you just heard Stephanie mention a kiosk, and that is a setup, if you haven't seen one, a number of churches are moving into this where there is, it's like an iPad setup, and you can, there in the church, go to this desk and decide whether you're going to pay your pledge through that, or have Mother's Morning Out or a youth trip. It can toggle through a number of different options for reasons that you would want to pay for something. I know that some churches that have moved into having a kiosk first set it up for all of these one-off expenses like vacation Bible school and youth trips and choir fees. So it is another thing to think about moving into. And along with kiosks, you can also get those squares that you plug into your phone if you're needing one-off. So those sort of one-off conversations can be a different platform than what Stephanie is discussing.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, we missed Venmo. I interrupted you when you were going to talk about Venmo.
Is that, am I?
That's Venmo, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. And you heard Julie talk about Venmo earlier. It is a contactless payment option used mostly by individuals, and usually individuals younger than I am, or people who are with individuals younger than I am.
People who hire babysitters.
People who hire babysitters, yes. I am generally an early adopter of technology, and quite frankly, I have not Venmo'd much until this year. Now that I am going to the store and the farmer's market for other people, we are not writing checks to each other in this time where we are trying to do contactless mail and pick up as much as possible. So we are Venmoing each other. I think it's now a verb like Zoom. So Venmo is an app for folks who would use to send you their gift. There is a flat 3% fee for credit cards, and there is no fee for debit cards. So I think for many people that may be very attractive. You do have to manually move the funds from your Venmo account to your bank account. They say it can take up to 3 days. From 1 to 3 days is what they say when you transfer it. However, I've never had it take 3 days, but your mileage may vary.
And this is another great place to, Stephanie was talking about the difference between a credit card fee and a debit card fee with Venmo. This is also a great place to highlight if you are not taking electronic payments from credit cards or debit cards at the moment and you're thinking about moving into it, to have a conversation with your vestry and put on the table that a number of churches have open conversations with their congregation about credit cards and only encourage credit card use when they know that their parishioners are paying off their credit card. You certainly don't want to be in a position where sending a pledge to the church is incurring debt. So make sure that that is a part of the conversation, and that folks, if they're going to use the credit card, which a lot of them like to do, they like to use it for the miles or for other points. I know I have several priest friends who use their credit cards to pay their pledge because they build up points and are able to get cards for sandwiches. And so then they get the cards for the sandwiches and they feed that back into the feeding program. So you not only can build the points, but you can use those points to turn back and give even more. So make sure that those sorts of things are on the table and they are conversations about it. And then those folks who do collect points are in a position to offer those points back.
Yeah. So we have looked through a lot of information. As a reminder, here are some things to keep in mind. If you already have access to a credit card processor through your church management database, check that first. You may already be paying for it, so go ahead and use it. Most of the platforms offer the same types of products, but not all of them. Determine what you really need and what's most important for you to begin. Eventually, you're going to want to create a diverse digital giving strategy, all the ways you can use the different programs, online, mobile, text, but start with what works for you now and then move into what works for you in the future. And fees are important, but they aren't the entire story. Keep them in mind, but don't let them be the driver of your conversations.
I think that's a great point. I know a number of churches do, as Stephanie talked about earlier, give the option for folks to cover the processing fee when they give their tithe. I know some folks, when they fill out their pledge card, if they're giving by credit card, there is an invitation to increase their gift by 3% to cover the fees. And then some churches just consider it the cost of being a church. So that would be an important conversation to delineate and decide on when as you move forward into this. And then the other one is, choosing a platform that works with your database now, or if you're wanting to change your database, think about which program will transfer between what you have now and the database that you want to bring in. Because a number of folks, they want to set this up, and then they want their giving to be consistent. And if you're changing platforms every 2 or 3 years, it can cause much more confusion than aid. So think about what you're wanting now, but plan out for 5 years to know where you would like to be, and make sure that what you're choosing to do now or any pivots you might make will help you get where you're going in about 5 years.
Yep. We do have additional information in our resources, but I know that you all will have great ideas for how to bring this new resource to your parishioners. Here's an example of the text that we put up on the Diocesan COVID resource page in order to help churches give information to parishioners. When we set up the Diocesan online giving portal, to receive gifts from parishioners. It is always helpful to give instructions for how to help people message through this process. You will need a series of messages through the process. Make sure they are easy for people to find in the emails or e-newsletters. I mean, seriously, how to give to St. Swithin's Church is the best headline. You don't want to make people work to find the information. One of the best ways we've found to refresh our messaging is to keep an eye out for what other organizations are doing. We're not in this alone. We have a whole
file of what other organizations are doing.
That's right. Other nonprofits and for-profit organizations, they spend a lot of time and money on their fundraising and marketing. So keep an eye out for what catches your eye. Sometimes you will be able to blend it into your own work. Sometimes you'll figure out that you are definitely on the right path on your own.
And folks, I'll add here too a consistent conversation that Stephanie and I also have. It is important to it is important to tell folks what their money is doing and how valuable their gifts are to your church. It is also important to keep Jesus at the center of it. We see so often churches that say thank you, but don't include the words God or Jesus or Holy Spirit or kingdom in their messaging. So make sure that the sacred gift you received, that the gratitude is offered on sacred ground as well.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, got one more. So you're going to want to think about the ways in which you can help people through these changes. And when we do that, we give them specifics. Sorry, I've moved past that. Here we go. I've got slides moving. Yeah, so really don't worry about over communicating here. When you feel like you have over communicated about giving, you are probably communicating just enough. Remember, repetition is your friend. Don't forget to use the different platforms to get your message out, as we saw earlier. Even though people may prefer one overwhelmingly, there are still people that want to hear from you in all different ways. And even though we are all at home now, we are still often distracted, and many of us are working long hours. Continue to use your ministry moments in your online services and across your different platforms, telling your story in all ways possible. Remembering to tell your story about what your church is doing right now so that they know why it's important for them to give. You can also use your social media platforms to tell the stories of how you're meeting the needs, by asking folks to share their stories from their social media accounts. This will help to reach folks of different demographics and continue to keep parishioners engaged with the ministries of the congregation, even while we are physically distant from one another. And just as we talk about how digital ministries begin with the message before worrying about the method, the same is true for all digital giving. The message is always the same. All giving is biblical. God instructs us to give, and we need to share the work of our churches and what they're doing to meet the needs of our neighbors, to show how we're spreading the good news, to tell the stories of how you changed the world. So update people on where their money is going, the ministries that you do, and the specific ways it's being used to serve those in need. How we give, through which digital platform, the method your congregation chooses, the technology, it won't help you unless you continue to proclaim the true messages of Jesus and the Gospels. That transforming love is the story that will work on all forms of technology and any digital platform you choose. So good luck. Check in with us as you go through these processes, picking your platform for your congregation, and let us know when you have questions. Either email us or pop on our Facebook page, because we're here to help. This is what we want to help you with.
We do have a couple questions, and we've
Okay.
had some comments come through as we've been talking.
Okay.
Before we address the questions and comments, I have a challenge for folks who are listening to this message. Now that we are all doing so well with all the different videos that we're putting out and engaging people, here's a thought. You know how Stephanie and I were just talking about being sure to get someone who is a millennial 20-something on your finance team to help talk through all the digital giving options, and also how we're saying the majority of givers in the Episcopal Church are older women. How about a little short video clip of a grandma and her grandchild? And grandma says, I've been teaching my grandson about pledging. Here's what pledging means to me. And this is what we talked about. And then he says, and I've been teaching my grandmother about how to give digitally. This is what we've talked about. If you have questions, we'll be available to help you through that. That would be such a super fun, and it could be a really short little video involving the people who are the givers and the ones who know how to give digitally. So that is my challenge when y'all do it. Please let Stephanie and me know. We can't wait to see it. All right.
That's right. In fact, videos on as part of the gratitude plan are perfect. They're very, very strong.
There's one of your ministry moments for this fall. Can't wait to see what y'all bring in. So Fuzzy just asked, could I and my daughters do that? Maybe. Nice suggestion. They're pretty good on tape. Okay, so one of the questions, Stephanie, is that with the diocese and the platform we have for churches to give through the diocesan website to their churches, that is scheduled to end fairly soon. Is that going to extend?
Actually, we're extending that through the end of the summer. We announced that at least a couple weeks ago to folks on the clergy call, and tried to get that out through the announcement that goes out to clergy. But yes, that is available through the end of the summer, so that churches have more time to make their decisions about getting their own platforms. When we originally made that decision, we didn't really realize what was ahead of us. And then once we got into this, we began to have more information and realized it was going to take people a little bit longer because the crisis ahead of us was more challenging. So yes, people will have at least through the end of the summer.
So I think what we'll do, because a lot of that did go out through clergy information, we can find that information for you, make sure that it is available on our website and through our Facebook, so that if you need to read through how it's going to work, you have that access as well. Yeah. I want to highlight our good friend Fuzzy up at POHIC brought up, and this is true, I did note this when we were planning this, Invite Welcome Connect is a tremendous ministry and a tremendous program. They have a website that is invitewelcomeconnect.com, and they normally during this week have a residency workshop in Swanee. They had to cancel that because of COVID, and they rescheduled after we had planned to do this on a Wednesday. They rescheduled one of their webinars for today at 3 o'clock while we are doing ours. I hope perhaps that you have folks in your church where some who are at the Invite Welcome Connect webinar and some who are here. Mary Parmer, who began that work and continues that ministry, is a good friend and a dear, dear colleague. She has been to the Diocese of Virginia several times to do workshops for us. Her materials are phenomenal, and they work really beautifully in tandem with what Stephanie and I teach as well. And there's no doubt that, I mean, I follow Mary so closely that I know a lot of what we talk about resonates because Mary has taught it to me. So yes, these were at the same time, which was just the way the webinar crumbles. And I actually was really sorry to miss the webinar with Mary as well. So I know that they tape most of their webinars, and that information, actually I'll put it into the chat if you want to go check out the Invite Welcome Connect website that has just tremendous evangelism, communication, and invitation materials on it. Also want to note that the auto pay that you can send from your checking account, some churches have the, what do they call it when you sign up and the church does it for you?
ACH?
Yes.
No, that's when your bank does it, but
yeah. I mean, that's when you do it through your church. But the way that we see most folks liking to set up a recurring check, which counts as electronic giving because you are setting it up through your bank, and whether that your bank mails a physical check or transfers it electronically doesn't matter, it still is electronic giving, is one of the easiest ways, and what Stephanie and I have been doing for years. So along with being able to give through a point and click donate here, you can also make sure that you have instructions for folks, especially for folks who pledge, to go in and just set their pledge amount to recur and to go out without them needing to go and prompt that.
Exactly.
All right, I'll let you chat for a second, and I'm gonna put up the Invite, Welcome, Connect website.
So as I said, we will have those resources up when we put the slides and the recording up. It will include the list of the platforms that we talked about, as well as the links to their websites. It will include some ideas on creating a gratitude plan, different steps to include, as well as important aspects of that plan. Also have some tips on creating a plan to move people from traditional giving to digital giving, and ways to include messaging for recurring giving. It's not meant to be entirely inclusive. It's just meant to be a way to get messaging to help get you started in that plan.
And also on our website, you will find the previous videos of our webinars in May. This also includes our webinar a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, with Terry Goolsby from Horizons Stewardship. We were so excited for him to come and share with us. His materials are phenomenal. Both the recording and all of his slides are available through our website. And if you haven't had a chance to engage with Terry, I couldn't recommend the ministries that he has at Horizons and his colleagues have at Horizons, as well as the video that he did with us.
And I've just posted the link to the web page again, where you can find that recording of Terry's webinar, as well as the slides from that webinar, which a lot of people requested as well.
And then finally, on our YouTube channel, the Diocesan YouTube channel, we have created a special playlist of all things stewardship. So you can go there and not need to, we have a multitude of videos going up now, but you can go to the stewardship playlist and find all of these resources as well. All right, let's see if there are any final questions. I don't think so. We're so glad to see so many of you here. Thanks for making this Wednesday such a happy day this week. And before we leave, we'll close in prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let's pray. Eternal God of love, in you we live and move and have our being. Breathe through us again this day. Give us the courage to be open and welcoming to your Spirit, that we may be led to do your will and follow in your ways today and tomorrow. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to see you. We'll look forward to seeing you on Saturday or next Wednesday as we discuss annual giving. See you then.
All right. Bye-bye.